Hey, good morning, everyone. Um, Good to see all of you. So what I'll do today is that I'll just basically start off with a quick update and a quick recap of some of the things that were done last week. And after that, I'm just going to hand it off to my colleague, Ryan, who's essentially uh, joined our training and education department. And he essentially will take us through some of the videos and some of the training material that he's creating. And as is always customary, we will solicit feedback from you in terms of how can we make this better, how can we make the experience more smoother, and that's essentially going to be the theme of today's call. So I'm going to just start off with what are the key things that have essentially happened this week. So um, first is essentially uh, we uh, we are basically slowly now transitioning into kind of getting support for the cloud-based environments into the system and basically getting deeper. So with that in mind, essentially what we have done is that if you remember earlier, the way that we essentially did Azure AD was that we had a Connect Secure application and you had to provide consent for that application. And in certain cases it worked, in some cases it worked for a certain set of clients, it did not work for the other set of clients. So we essentially saw a lot of issues and frustrations around that particular piece. And so we've essentially kind of split this out into two. One is called Azure AD Legacy, which essentially is the current mechanism of how it's working, because a lot of people have already integrated the application the way it is right now. But we have the new Azure AD, which essentially uses the ability for you to create your own application in your tenant. Okay, and depending on whether it is CSP or non-CSP, if you're a CSP, then you will create this application within your partner center, Microsoft Partner Center. And if you're non-CSP, then you can essentially create this within Azure AD. When you create it over there and provide the permissions that we provide you in the documentation, you come here and enter the application tenant ID, client ID, and the client secret. Once you enter this data, it essentially pulls the data from, if it's a CSP account, it will pull it from all your clients. And this also helps us basically be compliant with the new changes that Microsoft is creating for making everything go through its GDAL instead of basically DAL that was existing earlier. And the second advantage of this entire piece is that in the case of consent that you essentially give for an external application, you are forced to basically come back and give consent every 90 days. And so when the expiry happens, you have to go in and basically manually give this consent once again. With this new model, you basically have the ability to define these keys for however long you want to basically keep them valid, up to 2 years. So in that particular case, you can essentially, you don't have the hassle of basically going every quarter and basically re-authenticating credentials. Although we suggest that you still basically keep this, because just in case you don't want to, you want to basically prevent any misuse of those keys, etc., you can essentially do this. But however, the biggest advantage of us doing this is when we essentially originally created the application from our side, there were certain APIs which were supposed to be read-only, but were accessible only with read-write credentials at that point of time. So we basically had created that application with those read-write credentials, and even today, a few of you have come back and basically told us that we are asking for more permissions than what we require. In this case, we have the ability to define the fine-grained permissions, and we are asking only for read access to the tenant. So this is basically going to be something that is far more secure, and this essentially is scheduled to be released by the end of this week, and will be available in all your tenants. So whatever uh, you have integrated already is already available in Azure AD Legacy and will continue to work. This basically, if you enter these credentials, then these will take over, and these will basically provide information for the companies that are mapped over here. So that essentially is how we've made this work. And we will essentially kind of now start providing more features on top of this, as I promised. So we are essentially releasing a cloud compliance toolkit, which is based on the data that comes from Azure AD. And this essentially is kind of laying the basis for that entire piece. So it's the same. So you basically do the company mapping, and then you import the companies from Azure. And then you can essentially kind of import all companies from Azure, map them to existing companies, and you're done. So This is the legacy, which was anyway there, and then you had to provide this thing. So there is no difference. One of the asks from a lot of you was basically to bring up the serial number and basically show it for every asset. So wherever we can essentially pull out the serial number, we basically pull up the serial number and you can essentially see with the assets. And all of this will essentially also be reflecting in all the reports. So you'll actually see the serial number in all the reports too. So with the asset reports, you will essentially see the serial numbers. There is essentially also a new event which you've added, which essentially says if there is a new insecure open port discovered during an external scan, then you can set up notifications for this. We recognize that this is important because you may mark certain set of ports as secure. So you want to be alerted only when something that you're not marked as secure is basically opened. So for example, you may say that anybody on 443 or 8443 are business applications for this company, so I don't care about it being open. But if any new port gets opened over there, you will essentially, and we detect it during an external scan, you can basically create a ticket or do any of those pieces out there, right? The next thing is that I don't know if any of you have noticed this already. The point is that like yesterday, we've basically started providing notifications. Now, we did earlier kind of triage and see basically we were providing guidance based on what is being exploited versus not what is not being exploited. But with this new vulnerability, what we are beginning to do is to kind of put it out there and basically kind of show it to you. So you will actually see an alert which comes up like this, which says that what are the alerts that are currently being exploited. And then if you essentially click on the information button that's right next to it, you will essentially see a pop-up which essentially shows you what are the assets that essentially have this particular vulnerability that is being currently exploited. So the basic idea behind providing this feature is that you remediate this as quickly as possible rather than essentially delay it because it's being exploited in the wild. So this is another feature that we essentially have added, and going forward, any of the vulnerabilities which basically come into our radar either through CISA or other sources that or CrowdStrike or other sources that we are talking to, where we are seeing active exploitation of any vulnerabilities, if we essentially find them, you will essentially see this red bar basically come up there, and you will essentially be able to kind of make this make attention of this. The second thing that we are going to be doing in the next couple of weeks is basically kind of bring this out also onto a dashboard in the front, which basically says which are the companies and how many assets in those companies are essentially impacted because of any vulnerabilities that are being exploited in the wild. So this essentially is the first step toward it, and basically the next step is essentially providing that information up on top. The next one is that one of the constant things that as we were reflecting back on a lot of the requirements that were coming in from multiple partners, one of the things is that the way that we had organized our integrations was like random. Like you would see Draytech over here, and then suddenly you see ConnectWise in between. So people are not clear about what kind of integration it was. So now we have basically categorized everything into firewalls or PSA. So essentially we have the categories and basically all the integrations under that category, which are basically showing up over there. So you'll be able to kind of see a clear picture of what things are out there. So one of the things that we covered last week, but I just want to kind of quickly go over it because I do not know how many of you basically kind of caught this entire piece last week. And a special thanks to Chris Lewis and also to Chris Blunt, who basically kind of is one of the reasons for why this module was basically created. So here, essentially, we basically started with Cyber Essentials, but my team is right now working on automating, bringing the same features for PCI DSS, okay, and then basically for HIPAA compliance, and going forward in the next couple of months, we will basically go to CMMC. So what you see over here basically is that you can create essentially a new, so like this basically is an assessment for Cyber Essentials. So similarly, you can essentially kind of, you will see, so over here, you will essentially see others which will basically pop up. So when you go into the Cyber Essentials, you add a new assessment, you actually kind of get the ability to enter all the questions. So it basically takes the complete questionnaire rather than basically the earlier view that we essentially showed was just that whatever we could automatically do, we just showed you that you are compliant or non-compliant. But right now we are essentially kind of taking you through the entire assessment steps. and basically giving you the ability to fill up all of those steps which you have to manually fill up. And whatever is not manually filled up, you can essentially is automatically filled up for you, basically using the data that's available within the tool. Now, the second piece is that there is something over here which you see, which is called the default template. What is this template all about? Now, the point is that when you get into a company, you know that for example, the company registration number very rarely changes. The company address very rarely changes. All of these are nothing but questions for which you can essentially set up a template where you say that these questions I basically have answered upfront, right? And then you can basically save that template. So the next time when you essentially create an assessment, these answers will basically be pulled in from the template automatically, but you have an option to override it when you basically submit the assessment. And so we essentially have, you can basically kind of, you can see that all the sections are in there. And this is basically modeled as a set of sections and questions. And what we've also done is that there are questions which have dependencies on other questions. For example, if you have said yes in this question, then this question becomes relevant. So all of that essentially has been captured in the way that this has been delivered. So you will essentially see that if you answer yes to a particular question, then a subsequent question will show up. So all of those features are in here, and then it basically takes you through the entire assessment. And if you basically save, so once you basically save the assessment, and this is essentially what we basically got from what we had got from Chris in terms of getting what is basically a Cyber Essentials assessment. And then once you basically have this put in place, then what you see is that you can essentially kind of save it as a draft. And then finally, what you can do is that you can essentially say that this assessment is complete. When your assessment is complete, you have basically something that's called view/download. So when you download it, it basically gives you a zip file. The zip file contains three things. One is a document which contains all the questions along with the relevant answers. The second is essentially a Excel which basically contains these questions and the corresponding answers. Third is a folder which is called evidence. Now, what does this evidence contain? The evidence contains basically each question and section and basically the corresponding evidence for the answer, so that your auditor can essentially pick this up and essentially use it for any analysis basically they want to do. So you're providing three pieces to this, right? One is essentially you're providing an answer to the questions. Second is you have the complete evidence to be provided. And third is basically like when an auditor looks at it, he has both of them side by side so that he can make this work. I already have feedback from a couple of you, and basically I think very valuable feedback. We are basically in the process of, for every question, adding the ability to upload one or more documents so that basically they can be submitted as part of evidence. So a couple of folks basically came back to us and basically said, for example, when we talk about company registration, we need to be able to upload the company registration documents and basically make that part of the evidence. So that essentially is being implemented right now. And basically in the next week, you will essentially see that part of it also being rolled out. And so the same holds good for the PCI DSS that we're going to roll out, and then NIST 800, which we're going to roll out. And then eventually we will get to CMMC and HIPAA compliance. So this essentially is the kind of rollout that we're doing, especially on the compliance module. So apart from that, we basically kind of we've gone through this, which is the simplification of notifications. But just wanted to point out to everyone that the notifications, please configure them from the integrations piece, because we are slowly going to deprecate the centralized integrations because it was causing too much of trouble and it was too difficult to handle. So with that said, what I'm going to do is to hand over the reins to Ryan, who will basically kind of take care of this entire piece. So we have basically, I've covered what we have to cover in this this thing.
Shiva, a couple of questions. Craig has a question that will be adding anything like a ransomware readiness assessment to the. I've not come across ransomware. Craig, do you want to? Can I request you to just come up and explain what that is, please?
Yeah. Craig, can you just explain to us what you would imagine a ransomware readiness assessment? Would that be basically looking at if you have a backup of the machine and the backups are this thing? If that is the case, yes, we are basically now writing integrations for all the known backup vendors. It has taken us some time. Yeah.
I come from the financial industry, the financial vertical, basically. And there's a ransomware readiness toolkit, or it's basically just an assessment. That all it is just a bunch of questions to answer. There's one for the financial industry and there's one for non-financial industries. I think CISA puts it out. I'm not 100%. I can't think right off the top of my head.
If it is basically a questionnaire, then absolutely, I will basically go and look at it, and basically, if you don't mind, I will essentially kind of send a mail to you asking for confirmation whether those are the templates, and I think we can basically put those templates in place.
Sure, thanks.
Another suggestion from Dennis is that if you stop midway on an assessment and come back, you got to start from the beginning. So is it possible to kind of save as a checkpoint?
We already have save as a draft, so it is already there as a checkpoint. Let me check. Basically, maybe we should just go to the actual question where we have stopped rather than essentially starting from the beginning. So I will get that changed.
Thank you, Dennis, for that feedback. Anything else? Okay, so if there's nothing else, yeah, keep the questions coming. We'll continue to monitor chat. But otherwise, like Shiva said in the beginning, we have Ryan, who has joined us recently and has done some great work with the collateral, which particularly on videos and how-tos. And eventually all of this will make it into a separate partner portal. But we just want to give you all a quick sneak preview of what is the kind of videos and content that he's working on. So Ryan, over to you, and take it away. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sri. Thanks, Shiv. So yeah, I'm Ryan, and we have been working on putting out a video library for you guys. I know some of the partners have already seen it, but we wanted to get it out in front of the group here today. It's published out on our YouTube site. Let me actually share. I got a quick deck here I put together for us. So if you go out to YouTube, it's youtube.com/@ConnectSecureEducation. I've also dropped the link in the chat here for everybody. So if you want to just click that. Once you get out to that page, under the videos heading, we've got a collection of videos out there. There's about 20 or so right now. This is kind of the first pass of these videos. And the idea here was to put together kind of short bite-sized videos the best we could, try to make them the shortest possible, but focused in on, setting up, configuring the different modules and the different functions within CyberCNS. So we started with a list of agenda topics that some of the colleagues internally here put together based on feedback we've been getting from, the support team, from the sales team, from the dev team, any of the partners that are interacting with us, we're listening. So we want to continue to produce additional content. We've got a couple others here that we've started with, but we also want to hear from you guys. So we're doing this for the partners, and we want to make using the tool as simple as possible. From onboarding, 101 level stuff all the way through, the advanced level things. So we have also set up an email, which is at the bottom of this deck here, education@connectsecure.com. So if you guys, have any feedback or suggestions on education material regarding the YouTube content, or even our user documentation, or anything relating to education and bringing better resources to you guys, let us know, give us feedback, drop those emails. We're monitoring this stuff, we're listening, and we want to craft this in the lens of the partners and what you guys are experiencing and needing. So, the channel's out there, it's public, that's the link to it. So you guys take a look at the videos, you can comment them, or you can email us to that address, and we'll look forward to producing some additional content here over the next few weeks. And
So, quick question for you, Ryan from Red. Can we have a playlist that links to this within existing documentation? That'd be nice for training if you could have a systemized process from beginning to end.
Absolutely right. Great point. So we've been talking with the documentation team internally here, and we're going to start bringing these videos directly within our user docs. So if you're on one of the docs and we have a video content available for it, we're going to standardize every one of the documentation pages so that there's a link to these videos in the docs. And then also inside of the actual application of CyberCNS, we've talked about, again, bringing hyperlinks or quick little information buttons on relevant modules to link you guys out directly to this content. So you don't have to go searching for it. So anything to improve, the user's experience and ease of use here is the idea. So love the idea, Rhett. It's definitely we're already thinking about that stuff. Great suggestion. But yeah, anything like that you guys can think of, we want to try to make this as useful and consumable as possible for everybody. So great question. And in that same vein, I want to also add, out on our website, connectsecure.com, under the resources heading, we've got our support page link, our blog, and some other resources. We're going to also create a quick link to the YouTube channel right there. So if you're on the website and you go under resources, you'll have a link right there that says YouTube channel. It'll take you here and you'll see the video. So again, we'll be putting these in multiple places so you guys can get to them as quickly as possible.
I think another feedback from Dennis is when there are new UI changes, I think we'll have to Dennis, I think the short answer is we'll have to keep this content refreshed and relevant as the changes in the UI happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Dennis, as the UI gets released, I will, plan on updating and rehydrating the videos as we need to, including if there's major UI changes, we'll want to get that re-recorded. Any functionality changes, like how we've relayed out the integrations menu, for example, right? The first time we recorded, it was different. Now it looks new. So we will be sneaking in updates to the content over time, keeping this stuff up to date, in addition to releasing new content, right? As the application changes and we bring in new, cyber assessments and new integration features, we'll be sure to release content on that stuff and keep us on the cutting edge here. So yeah, thanks for that feedback, Dennis and Chris. Yeah, the branding, shout out to the marketing team. They gave me all the logos for the branding. That wasn't me. So shout out to the marketing guys. But yeah, that was a quick blurb there, guys, for that. So over the next coming weeks, we'll be continuing to update the content. And again, we're just really looking for feedback from you guys. So any partners, whether that's good or bad feedback, please let me know. We want to make sure that this stuff is meaningful and it's got value, and you can use it, right, to train your staff and make sure that everybody is getting the most out of this platform. That's the idea here. So. Looks like we got a question on dashboard rebranding. I'm not sure if you have any info.
Sure. Shiva, you want to chime in, please?
So dashboards, basically, we are essentially putting in new technology for the dashboard, because what we're seeing with the entire Kibana stack and also the Elasticsearch stack, I know a lot of you would have experienced the famous 500 errors, and we essentially root cause that to essentially Elasticsearch basically have not being able to handle multiple simultaneous connections and essentially having too many memory issues. And so we are what we are doing right now is to essentially kind of migrate off a bulk of the data over to PostgreSQL, and then essentially bring back a framework which is more adapted to the modern day analytics framework. And basically, we will see some of that in action in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And at that point of time, we'll be able to kind of do a reveal on this. And Sean had asked if there is a plan for CIS framework in the assessments. The answer is yes. But CIS, as you know, basically has 20 sections now. So it's going to take quite a bit of time to kind of get through all of those 20 sections. So we basically will plan on releasing this in the later half of May. So that is essentially where you will essentially see the CIS framework come into play.
And Kuram has a question, Shiva, on the remediation for Google Chrome.
Google Chrome, folks, the problem with Google Chrome is that while we apply the patch, the way that Google Chrome works is that it does not basically apply the patch immediately. What it will essentially do is it will basically upgrade the software. But the real thing is that when you basically open Google Chrome the next time around, that's when it actually basically updates itself. It does not update itself, even though the version changes in the file version. It does not change it does not change from a system perspective. When you click on Chrome and relaunch it the next time, that's essentially when it updates. So the only problem that we have is that we could essentially say that I'm going to just shut down all instances of Chrome and restart it. But you might have something which is running on it, which you don't want us to restart it for. And that's the reason we don't force restarts on it. If there is no Chrome which is running at that particular point on that machine, then after remediation, it will essentially kind of start it once and then shut it down so that basically the upgrade happens. Craig, I think you brought up a topic which is very interesting, which is what we wanted to ask you folks, which is, should we move towards becoming a GRC software package? Is it relevant for this market, or is it more of an enterprise play? I think because there are lots of people who are telling us that you have to move towards GRC, but we are basically kind of holding our breath because we want to understand from our partner-based perspective, what is their feedback in terms of basically, do you think we need GRC? And if it is GRC, then I agree with you. We basically will be providing all these assessments, and we can crosswalk between them, and we can actually show compliance across all of those standards. Matt, I agree with you. In the sense that, yeah, we can do that. So, as I said, we don't mind integrating with any platforms. We will basically integrate with multiple platforms. But if it becomes a requirement that some of that functionality is brought into this platform, then we shall basically do that too. So that's how we plan. And again, as I said, it's something that all of you will basically control and tell us whether that is the right thing to do. But this is essentially how we're going over this. So Srikanth, I think we are done with all the questions.
Hey, this is Khurram Shahzad. Actually, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Kuram.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
so we are basically service provider, MSP, right? And we have a customer, right? Integrated with our Cyber CNS tool. So my question is, as I wrote down on the chat side as well, once we are ready for remediation plan, and we are trying to push this patch for Google Chrome, right? So I'm seeing that asset numbers is remain same, and vulnerability is numbers also increasing. So this is a complicated part for in front of me, because when I saw the version which is available for the Google Chrome, it is new. But once I reached to the Cyber CNS portal and I saw their version which we are going to patch, it is basically not new. Means it is a one one version older than the new version, right? So what is happening? It was maybe around 1 week ago, but now I'm seeing that version 1.11.0556365 is available right now, but it is not available before. So what is the reason behind this, and how our asset numbers which we are going to hit this patch, it is reduced, or how I believe that it will patch, but I'm not sure that why the asset number are remain same. Can you please explain this in a little bit detail?
This sounds like a support call, guys, not for the partner call.
Yeah, technically, Kuram, the answer to that question is very simple. It is technically the answer is that whenever basically Chrome makes a release, right? Within 12 to 18 hours after the release, you will essentially see the updated versions on the portal, because we have to basically validate the new release. We have to make sure that it does not cause any side effects. And second is that we've seen that sometimes basically Chrome would essentially release a patch and then they would revoke the patch within basically 6 hours, because they usually find problems with the patch, right? So, which is why we basically keep anywhere between 12 to 18 hours as the window in which we will essentially kind of release a new version of the Chrome patch that is available, and basically recommend that new version. So if you are essentially seeing it between the time when Chrome patch is released versus when it is when the package is available, then it is likely that you may see a older version. So there will be 12 to 18 hours of delay, and that is basically intentional. Second, if you're basically seeing assets that are counts that are not decreasing, there are two aspects to it, Kuram. When you essentially have when you basically do when you do a scan, then it basically collects information. Now you do a remediation. If you have done the remediation from within the system, it will basically force an update and basically bring back the new data. If you have not done the remediation through this system, but basically done it through an external system, you need to run a scan again in order for us to pull the latest version data and then update it on the portal. So make sure that you have scheduled your scans.
All right, this makes sense. Let me do the same thing.
Yep.
All right, fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuram. All right, so any more questions? I think we have all caught up. Okay, if there is nothing else, thank you everyone for your time. And we will again catch up on the next Wednesday. Have a great rest of the day and take care. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Roy.
See you.
Bye.